This is going to be a very fast look at how we can use Visual Studio Team services to provide a deployment dashboard sitting on top of the existing tools in use in the deployment flow. So here we're looking at a custom dashboard that I've quickly put together that's showing the success of Jenkins builds in a couple of different ways, and also the state of deployments into various environments. So to work this through, we can see that we're going to try and correct an incorrect dashboard title. So let's go into our application, which in this case is a Java application. We're going to manage it using Eclipse. It's controlled using a Maven file for dependencies, and the source code is sitting in GitHub. So I'm going to change this and say, well, let's change that from my dashboard to a dashboard. Not going to do much here. We're just going to save that and say that we're going to commit that change and say I've updated the title, and I'm going to commit and push that, and we can see that this has been updated into my GitHub source code repository. So let's go and have a look at that, and if I get in there we can see, just do a refresh, we can see that that dashboard JSP was updated just now. Now the way I've set up Team Services is we've got a build that is listening for events in GitHub and has now been kicked off. So let's just go and have a little look at that. This is simply a wrapper for Jenkins. The trigger is continuous integration, and it's looking at the GitHub repository. So it's detected that there was a push, a commit into GitHub, and then when it's done that, it's simply going to delegate this out to Jenkins. And the reason we're doing this is so that we can track it. So if I go back and have a look at the actual running definitions, so let's go and have a look at this one and go and see what it's doing. We can see that initially what it's doing here is just, I've chosen to use our hosted agents, which are the agents that are available in Azure, but you can also run this on-premise or in a different cloud. It's just an agent that needs to be installed on any machine, Windows, Mac or Linux, that will then turn it into a build machine. So this is just connecting to, in this case, it's just done it, connected to one of the agents in our pool in the cloud, and then it's communicating with Jenkins. It's simply carrying out that task and saying, I want to kick off a Jenkins job. We can see here the output from Jenkins, and if I go and have a look at our Jenkins build server and just refresh here, oops, there we go, we can see is that the myshuttle.ci is now in progress. So this has been initiated, delegated from the team services build. So we'll just let this complete for a second, and this is a Maven-based Jenkins build, so that's just completed. That's successful just now. If I come back in here, we can see that that's one successful, and I can go and have a look at the summary of the builds and so on. But I've chained these together so that we now get a continuous deployment. And so the next step is that we can see this is now deploying into our development environment. So let's go and have a little bit of a look in there as well. Again, if I go and look at the logs, we'll see something similar. I'm choosing to use the hosted agent, but I don't need to. So it's trying to communicate with that before it carries out its steps. So let's go and take a little look at the steps. And the steps I've set up here are really just to replicate G3. I don't have access to G3. And so what we're looking at here, I've chosen to use Azure, and I'm using something called Azure Resource Groups and an ARM template, Azure Resource Manager template, which is basically a JSON file that describes an environment. So in this case, I'm setting up a Linux-based, it's Ubuntu-based Tomcat MySQL server, and on that there's also a JDK. And so this step is just really saying, and there are various actions you can take if ask it to perform. In this case, I'm saying create or update this. So if it already exists, just make sure that it's in the state I want it to be in. If it doesn't exist, create it, and create it in this case in our North Europe data center, but you can choose from whichever makes sense. Again, this is just replicating the provisioning that I think G3 will do. So this is just my attempt at replication there. And then after that, I'm saying go ahead and do a deployment of our revised Java app into Tomcat in this example. But I can choose from a library of tasks. There are, of course, a number of Azure-related tasks, but you'll notice as well that there are also integrations out into other tools like Chef, Octopus, Docker. I've added in the IBM Urban Code extension, Nexus. You can integrate in with Hyper-V as well as VMware, but also execute remote commands using SSH. And if none of those meet your needs, then we have a marketplace that you can look for further extensions from the community and from us. So let's go and have a look at how this release is doing. And let's go back into the logs. And in fact, I got there just as it finished. So that has now been deployed. And we can see that it automatically deployed to dev, but it's not going to deploy to QA until we provide approval. So if I was to come in here, we can see successful in dev. It's waiting for approval before it deploys into QA. So let's go and give that approval and say this is okay for QA. I can defer this if I want to, but I'm going to just approve it and say do it now. And then it starts that deployment off into the QA environment. Now if I just go and have a look at this, if I was to refresh our application, then we can see that our code change has flowed through. So this has indeed been deployed into the development environment. And then I'm not going to wait for all of this to complete, but if we go back to our dashboards, we can see that the latest build was successful. How long it ran for. This is in Jenkins, but we're just getting the information back. And I can also see that we've deployed release 48 into dev. We're currently deploying it, release 48 into QA. But the UAT environment still has release 46 on it. So this is a custom dashboard that allows us to show some of that information.